ASU and ASU Care acknowledge the 22 Native nations that have inhabited this land for centuries. Arizona State University's 4 campuses and ASU Care are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of indigenous peoples, including the Acamel A'atum and Peeposh Indian communities, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. We acknowledge the sovereignty of these nations and seek to foster an environment of success and possibility for Native American patrons and communities.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the beautiful evening at this beautiful theater, ASU Care. My name is Ken Koshio. I'm the host tonight. And if you don't know me, I'll tell you later. So anyways, it's going to be a great, evening together. So anyways, this event, if you're not familiar with it, it's called the Gather Storytelling. So if you're not familiar with tonight's show, so you see a lot of interesting, storytelling means people's experiences or even some kind of, historical or cultural background of the, stories coming this moment to be shared with you guys. So anyways, today's first storyteller is me. And I'm gonna talk about, thank you, who I am. But before I'm gonna talk to on this main, mic, I'm gonna introduce myself. Okay, so this event theme is the natural world. We'll be sharing stories about a connection with nature. And myself, I was born and raised in Japan. I moved to this country back in 1996 to be a rock and roll superstar. But tonight, a storytelling event's great host. I'm so honored to be who I am after 30 years later. So anyways, so my storytelling tonight is, I was born and raised in Japan, but always I've been looking up to American culture, means rock and roll, blues, and a lot of movie stories. Always those stories affected me, especially when I was 6th grade, the Star Wars, okay? That's another great storytelling, especially this past 40, 50 years. So myself, gonna talk about my Japanese kind of myth story and talk about who I am today. Thank you. でためでたのこの神々の祈りの中で歌い語りますSo a long time ago, in Japan, it was built some gods or spirits. We say kami. Mean is, some translation means God, but maybe the God or gods, especially for different, religious background people. Maybe it's confusing. But also, Hopi Kachina spirits, they say it's gods too. So just wait to see our spirits, or a long time ago, even there's the human beings like us built the country of Japan. So his name was Susanoo. He was a male god, and he was really, really wild, crazy guy. So, but at the same time, he has power to not just control, to organize the society, means people and the nature. So one day, he came around a village. So all parents was asking, or actually crying, and then kind of wonder who's gonna help them. Seems like every season, 8-headed dragons came down to the village and take young girls, then take away and then destroy the villages. So the village was wonder if that one is coming soon. So they asked the Susanoo, excuse me, if you are the Mr. Susanoo, you know how to maintain those bad guys. So could you help us? He goes, well, okay, let me think about it. But if I did the work, what is your... They goes, okay, if you did it, I'm gonna give you our daughter, who is the best, beautiful, and best girl in the village. He goes, sure. So then one day, the 8-headed dragons, and his name, or the head's dragon's name, it's called the Yawata no Orochi. So it means 8 heads. Orochi means dragons or snakes. So then they came and then started to, announce, hey guys, we're gonna take care of this village. So give me a girl, say, come on. So I don't know, they're speaking in Japanese or English, whatever. But they noticed could be in Japanese. So then Sano came, you guys, I'm not gonna let you do it. So, but he was so smart. If he fought with that 8-headed dragons, it's not easy to kill him. Okay, I want to have a good party with you. Give them a sake. They drank. They're happy. Well, where is the girls? Finally, they're totally drunk up. Then, Sano killed them. So then, the village was saved, and finally, the Sano got the daughter. Her name is Her name is Kushinada Hime, Princess of Calm, you know. So, and the village stayed healthy and good. So talk about this story, why I started, because what is the dragons? So some stories said maybe spiritually there's dragons, even Eastern, myth, whatever. But even waterfalls or rivers. So some announcement or some kind of my studying says that village had the 8 big rivers. So that one is sometimes bring a lot of great, healthy givings to make water, to make them to be, making the crops or anything. But at the same time, like after winter, a lot of flood totally destroyed the village. So maybe that was belong to that kind of nature, gives them to make that story. So tonight's my feeling, just I want to share with you about this story and it belongs to my life right now. If you know me as a Japanese taiko drummer, you know me here, there to bang my drums. But if you don't know me, I'm kind of famous last 3 years because I climb the highest mountain, highest peak every day for the top and bang the drums. Even the gentleman, oh, that's you. So I don't know, that's a good bad. But anyways, I've been doing since March 23rd of 2020 because, this COVID kind of stuff took my whole work. No performance opportunity. So, and I've been doing, today is I climbed the top, 1,346 day or something. Thank you. Yeah. So that's my kind of introduction of myself. But tonight, this morning, really beautiful clouds, kind of carpet. If you're at the top, and if you come to my Facebook of the live, every single morning I do, like a Facebook live. If you're interested, sunrise time, I do it. So anyways, that whole nature, clouds, and the whole movement of the nature seems like dragons to me. So everybody, thank you very much. You can find the dragons surrounding you. Thank you very much. All right, now I'm a host. So we have another time to ask you guys any questions, any output from you guys, input too. So next, our storyteller. Let's meet. This is actually first storyteller, Richard Gehrke. Give big hands. So Richard is a landscape architect, and some of Richard's favorite things to do are scuba diving and underwater photography. He travels all over to go to arts, science, and cultural salons, and it's a part of a local group, the Spirit of the Sciences. Let's welcome Richard.
Thank you very much. In the year 2000, the place I was working at that time gifted me a trip to Maui. At that point in my life, I was a pretty mundane person, stayed at home a lot, and I had no idea that this trip was going to change my life. So the time came for me to make this trip, flew to Maui, stayed at a lovely hotel in Kaanapali Bay, white beaches, the turquoise waters. First time I've ever been there, so I had the touristy list of things I was gonna do. And on that list was go snorkeling. Let's get the water. So you go and you rent the snorkel, the mask, the fins, headed out into the water, got into the water, and I just couldn't get the breathing. I was getting water in my snorkel, and I hated it, didn't like it. Got out of the water, and then I thought, well, let me try one more time. So I went back in, got in the water, and I figured it out. I started getting the breathing down, the water down. Once I got past that, then I started to actually look in the water. It was like I had put my face into an aquarium. All these fish, the blue water, the colors. I even saw turtles. It was awesome. I loved it. Just kept paddling and paddling around out there. But then I noticed something else that caught my attention. I saw people with little air tanks on, and they were swimming around beneath me, and they were exploring the same area, but they were divers. I was like, I want to do that. So after my trip from Maui, I returned to Phoenix, signed up at a local dive shop, took lessons in scuba diving, got my scuba diver open water certification, and a year later, I went back to Maui. And I scuba dove. Went to Lahaina Divers, signed up, spent a week there diving. Now, when you go diving, there are rules you have to follow. And one of the first ones I learned was, when you're diving underwater and you see a shark, make sure that your dive buddy is between you and the shark. So that when they're getting eaten, you can get away. No, there's no such rule like that. But that first year, that first return to Maui, I did see my first shark around Molokini Crater, and I just was dazzled just watching the shark just swimming away, doing its own thing. It was just breathtaking. Since that time, I've been diving for 20 years, 20 plus years. Oahu, up and down the west coast of Mexico, down to Costa Rica, up and down the east coast of Mexico, all throughout the Caribbean islands. Did you know there's like 600 Caribbean islands? I've been on 10 of them. That's 690 to go. But something to look forward to for my future. And then the other thing is, before diving, I always kind of experimented with taking photography. And then I started taking that down with me and learning how to do underwater photography. And I started taking pictures of all the sharks and the turtles and the fishes and bring them back and share them with my friends and all my stories whenever they'll listen to me. So as far as memorable photos go, I have this really interesting blurry photo from a night dive in the Caribbean. We were swimming down there at night, and we came across a patch of the seafloor where there was like 10 sharks just laying there sleeping. That's what sharks do. They just go to the bottom and they sleep. So we were gathered around them, and then one of them must have sensed us around them, and they kind of got stirred up and started to lift off and go away. One of them came up and came straight at me, smacked into my camera, and went that way. So I've got this great photo of this blurry shark face, and there's a little bit of a white tip of its fin. And that's the other thing, you know, I do see sharks. And whenever I tell people I'm a scuba diver, people are always like, but what about all the sharks? I'm like, really, the sharks are busy doing their own thing when you go diving underwater. As long as you're not over there like poking and bugging them, they're off swimming to the office, swimming to school. They're just doing their own thing. You know, they hunt at night, at dusk and dawn. Generally, when I'm diving during the daytime, so they're just swimming around placidly or sleeping in little coves in the reef, just leaving everyone alone. I'm off track here. So another one of the scuba diving rules we have is we do not interact, we do not touch anything. You don't touch the fish, you don't touch turtles, you don't touch the mermaids. You don't mess with the coral, you don't pick up coral, you don't pick up shells, we only observe, we take pictures, we don't interact with anything. But the question is, what if the fish life interact with you? That was the conundrum I had on another dive. I was diving on the island of Utila, north of Honduras, and the divers in that area, because there's an infestation of lionfish, which are an invasive fish, which are not native there, they're teaching the nurse sharks to eat the lionfish. So they go underwater and they spear a lionfish, they cut it, and they give them to the nurse sharks to get them used to the flavor and the taste and to make them, this is good stuff. The side effect of that is that when you go diving there, the nurse sharks come up and they're looking like, hey, got any treats? So that's what happened to me. Came to a dive site, went diving down, I'm working my way down, and I see a nurse shark coming up to me, and literally it starts swimming around me and brushing up against me like a cat. Look for a treat, and I didn't have a treat. And there were no fish police to tell that he was touching me. So like I said, I've dove many, many places, many, many islands. And it's really difficult having to go to these beach-like destinations in the turquoise waters. But the one thing I have noticed over my 20 years of diving is things are changing. The corals, I see large areas where they've turned white and they've turned brown and they're falling apart. And I'd say overall, the quantities of fish even seem to be less. Sharks, even less. Did you know that humans kill like 300 sharks a year? And we're also massively overfishing. So I can see the difference when I'm underneath the water, the damage we're doing to this beautiful aquarium underwater that I love to enjoy and visit. But that's not going to stop me. I'm going to keep on diving, keep exploring. I'm not hanging my fins up anytime soon, because I know there's lots of sharks out there still waiting to see me.
Thank you very much, Richard. One more time, big hands to him. So what a great story, the nature is always telling us, be better human beings, right? Okay, so now, next storyteller is Bobbie Scopa. Big hands. So welcome to Bobbie. She's a retired firefighter, author, and a podcast host, and a public speaker. She has worked mountain rescues, city fires, mega wildfires, and everything in between. She has 45 years of firefighting experiences and has received many awards, including Firefighter of the Year from the Professional Firefighters of Arizona, Governor's Award, State of Arizona Certificate of Appreciation from the City of New York for work performed at the World Trade Center in 2001, and more. Here you go. Big hands. Here's the Bobbie.
Over my 45-year career as a firefighter, I have had lots of adventures, as you can imagine, both in the wildland firefighting environment and in the city firefighting environment. Not only did I have lots of adventures, but I got to partake in other people's adventures. And they might not have felt like they were adventures, but to me as an observer and as someone helping, they were. So I'm going to tell you a quick story about something that happened in 1990, 92, sometime back then. And I was a captain on a fire department here in Arizona. And I was, besides being a firefighter and doing the emergency medical work, we all did lots of different things. And one of the things that I also did was I was on the high angle rescue team. Meaning if someone drove their car off a cliff by mistake and we had to rescue them, we would rappel down the mountain and rescue the person, treat them, and get them brought back up. Someone fell off the mountain when they were rock climbing, we'd climb up there, we would treat them. And so I was certified in mountain rescue, and that required a certain number of classes that we took around the state and a certification test. I was comfortable doing that work. One day I'm off duty and my beeper goes off. Remember the beepers in the old days? And it says I've got a mountain rescue assignment, and I assumed it was at one of our nearby mountains. Well, when I got to the station, I was told we were going to be driving about 35 miles away out of our jurisdiction, and not only was it not in our jurisdiction, it was not a mountain rescue, it was a mine rescue. Well, the only thing similar between those two things is we're using ropes. The mountain rescue, I'm outside the mountain, and the mine rescue, I'm inside the mountain. That's where the similarities end. And it takes specific certifications and training to be an expert in rescue. I knew nothing about mine rescue. But we're called to help, and so off we go. So we drive the 35 miles, and we get to the neighboring town, and where the mine was, there is a deputy sheriff and a 13-year-old boy standing out in front of the opening to the mine. The mine had big boards across it, like out of a movie set. Danger, do not enter, hazards. And of course, where did two 13-year-old boys go? They went to go exploring the mine. And the one 13-year-old boy that was still out there with the deputy sheriff was going to show us the way into where his buddy had fallen. I was very nervous because I'm in charge, but I don't know a thing about mine rescue. The only time I was in a mine was when I was a 13-year-old kid messing around where I shouldn't have been. That was my experience of mines. So we followed this young man in, and we have backpacks full of ropes and climbing gear and harnesses and lanterns. We're set. You know, we look like we're ready for whatever, but we're not ready for this. So we follow him in, and we walk in, and and the horizontal opening, the tunnel, is called a drift, and the shafts are what go down. I learned that after I did a mine rescue. So we go in on the drift in the tunnel, and we're walking for a while, and we get to, there's all these forks in the tunnels. Now imagine the tunnel is about 4 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. So everybody's walking like this because you can't stand up. And we get so far in, and now we come to a spot where there's ladders. Now these ladders were built probably 50, 60, 70 years before. These are old ladders. These are not OSHA approved. And I'm in charge, and I'm not comfortable with this. But we've got to get there, and that was the best option, is to climb the ladders. So we climbed the ladders one at a time, making sure that we're in our harnesses and we're tied off just in case something happens. And now we're going further back into the mountain. And now what was a 4 foot wide by 4 foot tall drift is now about 4 feet tall, but it's only about 2 feet wide. But it's not so bad. Don't worry about the claustrophobia. No, because it drops off some unknown amount of depth down to our left. So now we have a ledge basically we're walking on. It's kind of sloped, and so more hazards for us to get through. And the whole time I'm thinking about this young kid who's stuck in here, and I'm worried about the 6 people that I have, I'm responsible for. We finally get to the location. It took us about 45 minutes to get to to find the patient, and the drift ended in a hole. Now, it continued, but there was a hole between where the drift was and the other side. What happened was the young boys were going to cross a timber, walk across the timber to get to the other side, and gosh, it was rotten and it broke, and the young man fell about 35 feet or so. Now, what he landed on wasn't ground. What he landed on was old timbers that had fallen in and that were like pixie sticks. You know, they were just down into the wall, and they were stuck in the wall. The shaft continued way deep beyond where he was. He just happened to land on these timbers. So we had to be concerned about getting him out. We had to be concerned about his medical condition, and we had a long ways to get back out of the mountain. Again, not knowing about mine rescue, how do we set up a belay? How do we have someone rappel down? We've got to get them into a Stokes basket. We've got to start IVs on him. We've got to treat him for shock, give him oxygen, because we don't want him to get any worse than he already is. Well, we got him out of that, not without a lot of trouble. As you can imagine, he's injured, so we can't just hoist him up like a sack of potatoes. We had to put him in, do all the precautions that you would take when someone has fallen. We assumed he had we know he had a broken leg for sure and other internal injuries. We got him out, and now we had that long route to get back out of the mine. It took us 45 minutes to walk in without carrying someone. Now, when we got to places like the ladders, we were unable to just lower him down like you would if you were walking. We had to lower him flat. So that meant every location where there was a ladder, we had to do set up an anchor and lower him down. It was a complicated technical rescue that we were ill prepared for. Now, the good news is that he survived, and none of the firefighters got hurt. That I felt like was a milestone. That it's one thing to affect a rescue. It's another thing to make sure no one gets hurt. Now, when we got out to the ambulance, or out of the mine, the ambulance was waiting for us, and one of our medics went in the ambulance with him and went in, because we're paramedics, so we were treating him the whole time, and so we had to keep that care going. We had been in the mine for about 6 hours total. Because I know by the time I got home, it had been almost 12 hours from the time I left home to the time I got back. And the point of the story for me is we got a call to go help, and we were unqualified, inexperienced, with no knowledge, minimal knowledge, how's that? Minimal knowledge of how to effect this rescue. I think that applies to many of us in our lives, in that how often have we seen someone needing some help? How often have we been asked to do something and we feel like, but we're not qualified. What do I know how to help this person? Whether it's a family member or a friend, I think we're often called upon to do something, to act, to take some action. And oftentimes we don't feel like we're qualified. And in fact, I think that is when you have to rise to the occasion and help fix the situation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bobbie. And it's a real, her life story. It touches me a lot too. Okay, so we have one more beautiful lady coming up, Marilyn Torres. Big hands. And Marilyn has been an ordained West African traditional storyteller for more than 40 years. She teaches at the Storytelling Institute at the South Mountain Community College, and her classes include sacred stories, storytelling in healing settings, and storytellings in healing settings, African oral traditions, and many more. Welcome, Marilyn. Big hands.
Testing, okay. So we went underneath the ocean, and we went inside of a mountain, right? So now we're gonna go to a river. Yamile heondo, Yamile heondo, Bogbo hashe obinisa wole. The language that I'm speaking is Yoruba, and the song that I'm singing is to the river. And so I want to take you to the river, but not any ordinary river. The story that I want to share with you is when I had the opportunity to spend 2 months in the Amazon jungles. And my story is a story that was a tremendous life-changing story on so many levels, because as a traditional from the West African traditions, I had seen rivers and I had traveled and so forth. But there was nothing like the opportunity to literally go up the Amazon. Nothing like it. I don't think I was as prepared, because I wasn't just going up the Amazon, but then I was going up a tributary with a group of doctors who were with a traditional elder named Don Agustino. And I was hired to be the translator. I was translating from Spanish to English, while I had another individual translating from Quechua to Spanish. So this was a very complex process that we were in. And we weren't going to be there for like a week, right? We were going to be there for a month. And I thought I had done everything I needed to do to prepare. There's a certain amount of things you can eat, and there are a certain amount of things that you don't eat. And you have to reduce an enormous amount of sugar out of your body, because you're about to experience what I experienced, was neon-looking large bugs, and the whole world was larger than anything I could have ever anticipated. And so it was that I prepared to the best of my ability. We got to Iquitos. And when we got to Iquitos, we were waiting for people to arrive from different parts of the country, outside of course, Peru. And I was asking a lot of questions. And the first question I asked was, are those the little boats that we're going in? And the elder that had asked me to do this said, yes, they are. I said, and how much can we actually fit on those boats? Because we're going up the Amazon. And we're going then up a tributary, and we're going to be there for a month. So whatever we take is what we're going to survive on. And my typical logic said, oh my God. I am, yes, very much connected to the goddess of the river. We call Oshun. But I had not been prepared for the Amazon jungles. And so we have all these doctors, American doctors, God bless their hearts, and many other individuals who really thought they knew what medicine was. And as we now load up these boats, and we begin to see these tiny, 3 of them, kind of like small rafts-looking boats, but when you get in them, they drop. Because everything that we needed to survive was on those boats. And there were certain rules that you had to follow as you start going up the Amazon. For example, if you see whirls in the water, don't put your hand in it because those are piranhas. Oh, yeah. And when you're talking to individuals, God bless America, and they're doctors, and you are translating, don't put your hands in the water because you're not in a movie now, you're in reality, it was an interesting challenge. Because of course, right, if you're experiencing this, you want to touch the water, but the distance between the water and the boat was very limited, so floating your hands through them would not be wise. And I was translating on one boat, and then there were 2 other people attempting to translate because I failed to mention that 2 translators didn't show up. So I ended up with a large percentage of the responsibility of doing a certain amount of translation as I'm yelling as the boats are trying to keep up with each other, don't put your hand in the water. Nevertheless, we get up through the Amazon, and for me, as at that time, to me, I felt like a student of anthropology, even though I'm a traditional and I've been all around many places. To me, it was like an incredible experience to watch all of these American doctors and individuals who are about to experience plant life, knowledge at deep levels, to be able to go up there and also look at individuals coming on rafts, just like a National Geographic magazine. It was incredible. And at the same time, when we go up towards now the tributary, where there was a campsite that was created for us because we would be there for a month. As we're going up the tributary, we had had a rainstorm, which meant that the rivers had gotten higher, the tributaries had gotten higher, and they failed to mention to us that indeed there were no launches, you know, like a deck where you kind of just go up the stairway and get up on? No. What was happening now was that the Amazon felt high as we entered into the tributary. But the tributary kept getting lower and lower, and the dirt, red dirt going up, was higher. And I'm like, how are we going to get off onto the earth, right, when we get to our destination? And I'm trying not to panic. I'm trying to be composed, and at the same time going, oh, dear, what did I sign up for? But nevertheless, we get there. And now we see a lot of people waiting on the edge of the Amazon earthbound thing there, and the rafts are up there and all of us. And now I'm being told to translate, yelling, right, because I'm in the back, to these doctors as they're yelling to me, tell them to just jump off and don't take anything with you. So I'm trying to translate from Quechua to Spanish, you know, don't jump off, you know, just jump off, and I'm in the back as people are jumping off. But what happened was that they failed to tell us that all the people on the edge of the area, they were waiting for people to jump off so they could jump in the water and grab all of our equipment, because every single person that had a bag was going to get paid. So what I saw at the back was a bunch of people jumping off a cliff in the water, swimming and grabbing the boats, and I lost it. I was screaming. I had a stick. I started beating people off the boat. I went Spanish, English, you name it. And I don't even want to tell you the words that came out of my mouth, other than that I knew I was going to die if they did not let me get off this boat. But finally, you know, when they saw me screaming and beating people off the boat, they thought I was a crazy woman. I had dreadlocks at the time, by the way, so I did not look like I looked as I look now, a little bit more. And I'm screaming in Spanish, in English, you name it. And they just were like, who's this lady? She's crazy. So finally, everybody just let go of the boat I was in, and I ran to the front. And I'm looking at them like they're crazy, and I'm just scared. And I jumped off and landed right at the edge of the cliff with mud all off me, mud in my hair, and I was just pissed off. I cannot believe that this was my introduction to the Amazon jungles. And then, once we got settled, we get up, and I have mud all over me, and I have a stick that I had brought with me, and there was red mud all in my locks, and they were like, ooh, big medicine. I'm like screaming in Spanish, like, and they all were like, big, you know, in Spanish. Ay, que grande, que grande. And I'm like, grande, grande, Dios mío. And I'm, you know, I was just so upset and so shocked, right? But I get up, I try to compose myself, and now we gotta go hike to get 2 miles into our campsite. And because it had been storming and raining, we were gonna go through mud up to here without knowing what was inside the water. And my hair was filled with mud, and I'm crying, and I'm like, why did I agree to do this? And eventually, of course, we got to our site, and everybody took their clothes off and jumped into a beautiful, clean river and washed ourselves off. And wow, what an experience. A month that changed my life. The laws of the jungle must be respected, but the river, this is the largest river that feeds, and these trees feed our earth with the air, right, that we breathe. And there was a lot that happened during that time. And about a couple of months ago, they were showing a special on the Amazon jungles. And what I saw made me weep. I saw all the development that was happening, all the destruction that was happening to our trees. I saw areas, some that I even thought I recognized, completely being plowed down because they were looking for gold, and people being displaced. And I sat in my living room and cried. I said, people will not see what I saw in 1991. People don't understand that if we destroy the Amazon and we destroy the plant life, that's where our medicine is. So much is there. And I realized the blessing of having had the privilege. Yes, it was a rough month, and then I was crazy enough and asked to go back, and I went back another month. I asked myself if I needed to have my head examined, but there was something about the privilege of living on the earth there, seeing everything larger than life. No, there were no bathrooms. You had to dig a hole. No, there wasn't any showers. You had to bathe in the actual river. You had to literally be up in your hut, which was very high to climb, and make sure before sundown that everything was closed in. And you had to have a machete beside you because you could hear the mother speak. You could see huge pythons wrapped on trees. You couldn't touch a tree. You had to make sure that if it rained the day before and you wanted to cool yourself in a mud hole, which is how it was done, you had to make sure you didn't kiss a frog because you'd end up dead. There was so much I lived and saw in that moment, and that I realized the beauty of the river, the beauty of the Amazon, the lungs of our earth. And so what I want to say is, let's pay attention. Because without the river, without the sweet waters of life, which is in our tradition, the Mother Oshun, without that, we cannot live. Our rivers are already reducing themselves. We must now pay attention. And the air has to continue to be looked at, because if we destroy the lungs of the planet, we're going to become dinosaurs. That's all I can say. So the reality is that when I was asked to come to tell a story, this wasn't the story I was planning to tell. But then I remembered the gift many months ago when I was asked to be the human library and share my experience. I had to talk about the Amazon. I had to talk about the beauty of it and why we had to care for it. And I thought, if we're going to honor the earth and we're going to talk about the magnificent ocean and all those mountains and caverns that we rescue people in and all that we're sharing, let us not forget the river. In Yoruba, it is said that Olofi, source, when Olofi looked down to the earth, Olofi said, there's something missing. And Olofi sent a spark down towards the earth. And a spring came up. And it was the sweet waters of life. And Olofi said, Oshun, you will be responsible to ensure that all things live and all things grow for humanity. Yamile heondo, yamile heondo, bogbo hashe, obinisa wole. Let us honor the rivers of life, because without her waters, nothing can live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What an inspiring story, Marilyn. All right, one more time, I want to welcome to those beautiful and strong speakers. Thank you very much, Richard, Gehrke, and also, I'm sorry, Mr. Richard Gehrke. Big hands, yeah. And Ms. Bobbie Scopa and Ms. Marilyn Torres. Please. Okay, so I wanted to now, your kind of time to, kind of ask them any questions. But before I'm gonna start to, ask you guys, I was, kind of told some questions from this director. So, all right, Mr. Richard, what is one of your favorite places you have done underwater photography?
My favorite place to do underwater photography is always the last place I dove.
May I ask you where it was?
The island Cozumel in Mexico. Spent a week there taking pictures of sharks, turtles, rays, and mermaids.
Well, especially I want to see the mermaids. But do you have any pictures we can check it up online, like SNS?
I have an Instagram page.
So of the your name, Richard Gehrke. Okay. If you want to check the mermaids, go there. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Bobbie. So you are a writer of books. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Well, I've been telling stories on my podcast for quite a while, and some friends said, boy, it'd be nice if we could read your stories. So I thought, well, not sure how that could go because I never considered myself a writer. But then I thought if I'm going to tell stories like I tell in the podcast, I really need to tell the whole story, including my life. And so my book is a book of not just fire stories, but stories from the fire service, but my whole life since I was a little kid is intertwined with the whole story.
Okay, so may I ask you, so the books, you have one right there. So if we want read more books, go to the Amazon.
You can get the book anywhere, bookstores, Amazon, wherever.
Okay.
Barnes and Noble.
So we can find out by your name.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Well, let me add a plug.
Please, of course.
If you go to my podcast, you can get all the information at
Oh, that's right.
my website, bobbieonfire.com.
Okay, check it out, okay? That's the most important thing you know tonight. Yeah, extension of her stories, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So now, Marilyn, could you please tell us how you get started with storytelling?
Well, I started really as a student of anthropology in New York, and ultimately the influence of anthropologists got me to ask a lot of questions about my lineage, and that resulted in me going back to Nigeria and resulted in me going through a journey in which I went through ceremonies and was ordained as a traditional teller.
Right.
And that pretty much laid the foundation to where I am today. The name I received in Nigeria was Omi Funke. Omi Funke, the waters have returned the last born. I spent a significant amount of time there with my elders. And then when I came, and also I received 2 chieftaincies by 2 women who were ruling villages of 3,000 people. And I was only 24 years old, so I went through a whole process around that because in the traditional world, you don't really put yourself out there in that way. You tell only your traditional stories linked to your ordination process, and through those myths and, quote, legends that go back thousands of years in many ways, that says who you are and how you move in the world. And so it was a process to be so young and have all of this. And ultimately, I grew into the responsibility of being what we would call an Iyanifa in this tradition, and to not tell personal stories. It was being at the South Mountain Community College Storytelling Institute that my great friend Liz Warren said, you've got to tell personal stories. And it took me some time, and so here you are. I share a few personal stories.
All right, yeah, so today's story is only the really head of the iceberg, so, make sure you can hear more stories about her too. So about your stories, how can we, keep to know what's going on, or even your website, or?
No, I don't. I have been quite deliberate.
Okay. Right.
And
So
the reasons for that are because I went into my own counsel. And I consider myself a very private person in the context of my personal life. And so a lot of things required me to really think about that. But guess what?
What?
After all these years, I am going to write. And I am going to tell what I call living Orisha, living connected to the elements of nature, where they've taken me, how they've guided, and how those stories reflect in metaphor and symbols the journey of your own life. So I am getting ready now to write. I feel I've matured enough to be able to share in a loving way all of what it means to walk the kind of path I've walked as a traditional in the academic world.
Sounds great. So we can looking forward to, hearing more stories or reading the stories about her and her stories. Okay, now, so all of you, anybody, if you have any questions or anything to share with them, please raise your hand, and our staff is going to take that microphone, please.
I got a quick question for Richard. You're so cool and calm about the sharks, but there must be some critter down there that really does scare the daylights out of you. And what is it, and what do you do about it?
The one fish that always makes me pause a little bit are the barracuda. And it's just something about their manner. You can't read anything into their body movements or their face, and they have some nasty looking teeth. And they just kind of slide by you and are giving this sideways look. Just don't like it. I stay away from them.
Thank you very much. Any other people? To anybody, please.
Richard, I'm curious, you said at the beginning of your story that in the past you hung out in your house a lot and maybe were like to yourself more. And then now you're on these adventures, you're traveling, I'm assuming you're interacting with people and just life a bit more. So it's like, what was it about scuba diving that interested you so much that it made you sort of change your life in a way?
I think that dive trip just opened up a lot of doors for me in general. I mean, I had never traveled. I've never really flown. I never left the Phoenix, Arizona area. And it opened my eyes up to traveling and the diving. And I've morphed. Initially I was all about traveling to go diving, but now I actually do travel to other destinations, New York, Boston, LA, just to explore museums and cultural things. I'm on my 3rd passport now. I have so many places that I want to go in the future. I mean, I can never go all of it, but this world, there's so many cool places to see and do, and
Yes, it is.
people to meet, and lots of sharks.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. Please, anybody, please.
So, Bobbie, you said your podcast is called Bobbie on Fire? And what is the name of your book, please, and what is it about?
The book back there on the table, on sale tonight. The book is called Both Sides of the Fire Line, and that's my memoir. And the podcast, Bobbie on Fire, has, I think there's about 95, 96 stories on there right now. Downloads of about 1.5 million. I'm up to about 1.5 million stories downloads. And so it's all, the podcasts, they're entertaining, I think. They're not just for firefighters. I think non-fire people will enjoy the adventure of it. And there's some comedy in there too. At least I laugh. I don't know if the listeners laugh. But I think they're good. I also write a magazine article, a monthly magazine article, but that one's more firefighting. That's for a firefighting magazine. So the book is my life, and it's got a lot of fire stories in it.
Great. Thank you very much. Any others? So Popular, Richard, and Bobbie. Anybody? To Marilyn? And me too.
Hi, I have a question for you on the end. I'm curious, you said you went back to the Amazon for a second time. I'm wondering if you would go back again if you ever feel that pull, and why or why not?
Well, the second time I went was because of the discovery of being a simultaneous translator. I had not known that I had that as a skill. And there were certain things that were done ceremonially, and then I found that I am a simultaneous translator, which made it very appealing to the elders that were working with the doctors there, and so I was asked to come back. The second trip was the much more challenging one. The first one, it was the adventure of having actually been in the Amazon and making connections and meeting the artists and just living in that Amazon and all of what it meant in terms of how alive it was and how everything felt so much larger than life in the Amazon. And so I was curious, and when I was asked to come back, I thought, you must be crazy, but okay. Because at least I had a little bit more of an awareness of what I was stepping into. But even then, I wasn't totally prepared because the Amazon changes moment by moment. And you can't predict what you're going to experience. And you're taking your life into your hands in many ways. And so I did it because I wanted to see if I could do it and if I could experience what I experienced, the magic of it. I did experience the magic of it. But I also wept because I knew I wouldn't come back.
Thank you very much.
For Miss Bobbie Scopa. Anyway, I read your book, and in part of it, it speaks about how that you were actually called to Ground Zero on 9/11, and you helped fight the fight and rescue people. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how challenging that was?
Thanks. Our team, our incident management team, was called to New York. There were about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 federal incident management teams that normally manage large wildfires, the mega fires, but we also do all sorts of things. And so one of the things was we got called up to go back there. The specific work that I did, the team that I went with, we were assigned to logistical support for the city. So there's like 50 team members, and everybody's doing lots of different things. My specific job, I worked down at the corner of Church and Liberty Streets, right on the corner, and there's, everything was still rubble, but we had these guys build a big, it was just like a 24 by 24 foot storage shed, basically. And my job was to keep the guys working on the pile supplied with whatever it was. And so a fire chief or a police chief would come in and they would need a rebar cutter, or they would need some specialized equipment. Well, our team had logistics ordering people back at our base, and I would put the orders in, and those equipment would come out, and I'd deliver it up on the pile, because at the time, the pile was still the pile, and we didn't refer to it as Ground Zero like everybody does. We referred to it as the pile. And so my job was I just worked on the pile back and forth between my little office space, and so I was there for about 30 days following we got there a few days later after the attacks. And then, anyway, I was there for about a month.
Thank you very much. It's a really touchy, real story.
I have 2 questions. What do you mean by simultaneous translator?
A translator, a basic translator may listen and then translate. What I was doing, which I didn't realize I had that as a skill, was that as soon as the person is talking, I was simultaneously speaking at the same time. And I didn't know that I had that skill.
So you had the skill of anticipation and know what they're almost saying?
I just was like, they're talking and I'm talking at the same time. There wasn't any, and I don't know what it was about being in the Amazon jungles that brought that out, but that's when I learned what a simultaneous translator was, because I knew translation. You speak, I think, I translate, right? That's not what was happening when I was there. The elder would be speaking and I'd be speaking at the same time. And so then I realized, can I do it now? No. But it happened to me during the entire time I was there. And I just thought that might be a gift that was being given to me because I was in the land of Oshun, the land of Pachamama. And I was with the indigenous elders there. And for whatever reasons, that's the blessing that I got from it. And that will always stay in my heart. You know, I will never say, oh, you know, that's not how we roll, you know. But she mentioned 9/11, and I want to say to you that I was there at 9/11. And the experience was life-changing. And I had the responsibility of getting 8 people from Arizona who flew in for traditional ceremonies out of 9/11, and our van was the last van that crossed the George Washington Bridge. And we drove nonstop, taking turns, until we got to Arizona. And when we crossed the border of Arizona, we stopped the car, and everybody fell to the earth weeping. It was one of the most amazing, life-changing experiences to have been there. So it's a moment of sobriety. And I'm a New Yorker, so I was really proud of how I saw New Yorkers handle that situation when they walked across that bridge. So, yeah.
I have 2 more questions. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm a native New Yorker too.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
And I'll ask them both. You can decide which one you want to answer. If you want to answer both. One is you said you studied anthropology in New York, so I was curious where you studied.
John Jay College of Criminal Justice.
Okay, yeah. And the other is, so it's a personal kind of question. You were talking about, you know, being up, you know, when you went to bed at night, you closed those doors, you know, in the Amazon. And my little tiny brain was going like, how did they pee in the middle of the night? Like, did you
don't.
Did you have cans under the bed like the olden
I'm
days?
serious. First of all, the way that the huts that were built for us, we had to climb probably where this roof was to get into our huts. And we also had nets that had to be stuffed, and we had to have machetes because there were no closed windows. So you heard everything. You heard every animal, everything. I thought I was going to be permanently damaged because I didn't follow the dietary restrictions of removing sugar out of my diet. And so I had welts of mosquito bites that they had to put mud in to suck out. And I was crying thinking I'm just ruined physically. You know, I'm happy to let you know that my legs look better. Okay? But bottom line is, it's a humbling reality check. You don't touch a tree because a python could be wrapped on it, blended with it. There's just so much. And you learn to respect the earth. It's just, I'm glad I came out alive.
Nets? You mean nets for the...
Yeah, we had to have, you know, when we had mats
Yeah.
that we would sleep in, right? And cushions and stuff. And then you had a net over
like
you.
a mosquito
and
net,
so, a mosquito net.
Yeah, yeah.
However, you had to be in that net before sundown because the swarm of mosquitoes that were moving around and everything. So it was like when you went into that room, like your little spot, and there were 4 of us per hut. When you went in there, you had your machete, you had your water, and you didn't go to the bathroom until the sun came up because everything was larger than life. And if a mosquito got you, that welt was huge, and it had to be sucked. The stuff had to be sucked out. So I'm telling you, it was a reality check. I was so happy to take a shower. I was so happy to see a bathroom. I was like, God bless America.
We're so
reality
spoiled.
check. And I grew up on the island, so I sort of knew outhouses and stuff, but nothing like that. Nah, it was real. Yeah. Brooklyn. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that enough? Thank you very much. That's great.
one last question? Otherwise, we can let it go for tonight. Yeah, one more.
I didn't catch the first speaker's name, but Richard.
Richard,
No,
yes.
No, you.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm a host, actually, but it's
yeah,
okay.
the
Thank you.
host. But you spoke.
Ken.
I'm really interested in the drumming.
Yes.
You do it every morning?
Yes,
And you've done
I
that
did
for
this
like
morning too.
The
Last night I came
some
back from
days?
Japan, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. So, and so where do you do this at?
Well, basically, my ceremonial reasons.
No,
part-
where?
Where? Top of the Paesto Peak.
Okay.
So it means I climb about 30, 40 minutes from the bottom with my drum. And I go up before sunrise time. Then about 10, 15 minutes before the sunrise time, I started my ceremonial action, play the bell, and I play the Native American flute, and I might bang my traditional Japanese drums, and I mean it's actually a drum, and then played the bamboo flute I played today, and I do a white balance like that, top of the peak. Thank you.
Good demo.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, so please come up to the top every day. Okay. Paesto Peak. So, if you've never been to Paesto Peak, you should check it out. This is a little bit cold, but good season to check it out. Yes. Any other people? Okay. Well, I mean, today I'm so honored to be part of this event because, again, I was born and raised in Japan, and then when I came to this country, even the country's size is different than my country. When I went to, Grand Canyon, man, billion years of is in front of us. So, like she was talking about the Amazon. So I went to Kenya when I was younger, and my story is a little bit just, sharing interesting thing to see today's world, what she said about New York and Amazon. So the Kenya is really, like 8 hours driving from the Nairobi, and then there's in the middle of nowhere. Their house is still straw and poops. They built that way. And the river is next them. Then we helped to, back in the 90s, like a supporting clothes, and then, getting the wells, and then also building the schools. And those children was drawing pictures, about their life. And the one picture says, the one river next their house, human beings are eaten by crocodile. Okay, help me, like that. And I asked, what it is? That boy said, well, my auntie was eaten by a crocodile, but fortunately only one leg. Okay? So, but think about, they have no car accidents like here. So the river accident like that is maybe more than car accidents. So when I've listened to the story of her or all of them, especially piranha and the sharks, which is more, dangerous, I don't know, depending on, but fires. Maybe both of them are not close to our life here, more like fires and the ambulance of the car accidents. Maybe that's a more, wild kind of a, story in the town, or big cities. So anyways, if you don't have any questions, I want to ask one more something, all of you guys, one kind of a things to share with them, please. Anything. Yeah, one of you guys. When you close. Yes. Nothing? Come on, how shark is strong, dangerous.
Thank you for having me here and to share my stories about sharks.
Big hands, yeah. Please, Bobbie.
I will suggest that when you think about firefighters, don't think about firefighters as heroes. Think of them as professionals, well-trained, just doing their job. That's a much better way to think about firefighters than to think that everybody's a big hero. because we're just trained professionals.
Great. Thank you very much. Marilyn, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share this story, and please let's take care of the river. Please let's take care of the river, because without her, nothing can live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, finally, so thank you very much for this, all of you audience today attending this great event and hosting this, ASA Care staff people. Please, big hands to all of them. Thank you very much. And, so we are, grateful to our storytellers and our audience tonight. But at the same time, this gathering, storytelling, next one is in February. So it will be Friday, February 9th, and theme is recognition. So now the stories seems like every different time, recognitions. So, by the way, tonight's this, really theme gave me a lot of new idea to live in this world. So water, everything need to be from this Mother Earth, so we can live together. And a beautiful, happy holiday season, and hopefully see you again soon. Thank you very much. I think we can talk over there, so please get the books.